Welcome, Housers, to another episode of On the Way Home. We are so fortunate every week on this podcast to have incredibly brilliant people talking about the great work they're doing across the nation, around the world, in the sector of housing, homelessness, health, poverty reduction, food insecurity, so many. And I learn so much every week, and I hope you do too. Listen, the only way we're going to make things change is if we build that awareness and education. That's what we attempt to do with this podcast. So please share widely. I am from Blue Door. Blue Door is an organization. And for the past 41 years in York, Durham, and Peel region, we've been doing great work with our most vulnerable, helping them find emergency housing, transitional housing, supportive housing for seniors, for families, for 2S LGBTQ plus youth, and much, much more. We help them access healthcare services. We have some of those on site. And as well, we run a construction social enterprise called Construct, something that we are looking to take that actual idea and bring it across Canada. And I say we don't want to run it, but we actually want to take Construct, find funding for other organizations who want to run maybe a construction social enterprise where they launch people into the trades, where they'll make great money to prevent homelessness or make it a real short experience. It'll be meaningful work. It's just a real successful program. And we're looking for organizations that might be interested in running a construct in their area. We'll help you get up and get started. And we hope to bring some funding to you to make that happen too. If you're interested in that, or just checking out the work that we do at Blue Door, go to bluedoor.ca. Hey, we don't do this podcast alone. We have an awesome partner in the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness. They're an incredible group. They do all sorts of training, advocacy. They run a giant conference that is just brilliant. Next year it will be in Ottawa. It was just in Halifax this year, and much, much more. Check out the work they're doing. Become linked to them. Get their newsletter and updates. Go to caeh.ca and witness the wonderful impact work that they are doing. Let's talk about today's guest. I've been a fan of today's guest for a long time, Larry Cohen. And Larry is the executive director of Point Source for Youth, the co-founder of that. Larry's been doing incredible work in the area of preventing youth homelessness. And I just love his just kind of take no prisoners, kind of push through, not take no for an answer. I mean, he really took Point Source of Youth from the beginning as a founder to a force in the United States. We talk on the podcast about a really cool project that Point Source is doing in a few different places where they do a cash transfer to youth. And I think people at first are shocked. You're just giving youth cash? But he talks about the economics of it, of allowing youth to make choices, to decide what, make decisions for themselves around housing and their future, and the success that they've seen in doing these youth transfers, how expensive it is to keep people in emergency housing versus giving people these cash transfers, and the outcomes that are different, much more positive outcomes with the youth transfers. We talk about that, his journey into the work, why he's so passionate about it, and much, much more. It is a must listen. Let's go to that conversation now. Larry, so great to have you on the Way Home podcast. I'm excited about this. I've been looking forward to chatting with you for a while. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's so fun to be here.
So, Larry, we ask every guest this question. I'm looking forward to your answer because it's, I guess, very personal for people. There's no right or wrong. And that is, what does home mean to you?
I would say chosen family is the best way to describe home. Yeah.
Love that. And here's the common theme, Larry, with everyone's answers. No one talks about the bricks and mortar.
Really, right. That does make sense.
It's about family safety, that kind of thing. We want to learn a little bit about our guests. You have an incredible story, and it's, challenge by choice. Share what you'd like. I think all of us, when we were going to high school or grade school, we didn't dream of ending up in the housing and homelessness sector. Somehow we end up there. Can you share a little bit of your story?
Sure. I grew up in Miami Beach. My mother was immigrant from Guatemala, and my father was from the Bronx in New York. His parents were Russian Jewish before that. And they met in Miami Beach and had me and my brother. And it was a tumultuous childhood, very unstable, lots of verbal abuse and other kinds of abuse as well. And yeah, I kind of escaped by being depressed, not speaking, stuttering when I did speak, and then lots of bullying in school, and then waited basically till I got out of the house and went to college, which I did in California at UC Berkeley. I wanted to go to a public school. Didn't trust my parents would pay for it after I came out, and then started working in HIV/AIDS because that's when the AIDS crisis was pretty bad. It was right when AZT came out, before combination therapy, and then when combination therapy came out, did a lot of work with an organization there to train doctors and patients on that new therapy, which would change kind of everything moving forward. And that kind of morphed to the world's biggest database of doctors, which I was minority owner of, and we sold to a private equity firm, which sold it to IBM Watson. And then I started Point Source Youth together with Ronald Johnson and Colin McSwiggan in order to end the youth homelessness crisis. There was a lot of work done in HIV. There's still more work to be done today. In Point Source Youth, there's a lot of work in HIV as well. And youth homelessness seemed to require a similar level of investments and focus as HIV has, and other allied movements need continued investments for. And that's kind of why we started Point Source Youth, is to focus on ending youth homelessness specifically for LGBTQ and BIPOC youth, which were really underserved.
What an amazing journey and story, and so cool. Thanks for sharing. Let's talk a little bit more about Point Source for Youth. You founded it, and you said with some co-founders. What is the primary, so what are some of the things you're doing? 2016 was when you founded it?
2015, yeah, pretty close.
2015. So in the past 8 years, what are some things that Point Source has been working on? What are you most proud of? We're going to talk about one of those today, but you've done all sorts of great stuff in the space.
Yeah, well, now we're working with 70 communities and 90 partners. So that's incredible in many states. And then we work to place power and resources in the hands of young people directly in partnership. Point Source Youth never provides services ourselves. And so we support host homes, direct cash transfers for housing, direct cash transfers for prevention, rapid rehousing, youth engagement, in all of those communities by working with amazing local partners. And we have 3 incredible conferences a year, getting the youth homeless community together to really coalesce around solutions that place power and resources in the hands of youth directly. And have a new policy department as well, which we're really excited about. So when I started Point Source Youth, I was volunteer, president of the board as volunteer. And today I'm executive director, and we're a staff of 24, soon to be 28 people. And working in 70 communities.
It's incredible. And it really takes brave individuals like yourself to go out and say, if it's going to be, it's up to me, and I'm going to take that step forward. It's very scary to start something and try and get it off the ground. You're now going to have 28 staff. Incredible. So we have a lot of different listeners from across Canada and around the world. Can you help us kind of understand, what does youth homelessness look like across the U.S.?
Yeah, so 10% of all youth experience unstable housing in a given year. It's the same in urban and rural areas. So it's basically everywhere. It looks different than, chronic adult homelessness or veteran homelessness. There's lots of couch surfing and lots of, creativity that young people have in struggling and trying to manage their houselessness. So it does look different. It is a giant problem, and one that Point Source Youth is laser focused to address. LGBTQ youth are overrepresented. BIPOC, Black, Indigenous youth of color are overrepresented, and trans youth and Black trans youth are especially overrepresented. And those are also the young people who have the most issues being affirmed by the current youth homelessness system, given the geography of the U.S., and also just given the difference, right, in who's providing services and who's receiving services. difference in age, difference in income, difference in race, difference in sexual orientation, and difference in gender identity. That difference is giant, and one that Point Source Youth really focuses on addressing.
Very cool. Now, there's a lot of great information out there, and there's a lot of bad information out there, especially when it comes to youth homelessness. Lots of misinformation and misunderstanding that people have. What should people know?
I mean, I would say there's less and perhaps misinformation than ignorance of the importance of the issue. So I think that's the main thing, that it's a hugely important issue. 10% of young people experience unstable housing. The second thing that's really important to know when thinking about youth homelessness is understanding the awesomeness of young people who are experiencing homelessness, and the creativity and the resilience and the intelligence and acumen it takes to survive those levels of trauma, and intersecting traumas and racism and adultism and homophobia and transphobia on minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day basis, and to survive that and thrive in it oftentimes. And then the last thing that is really important to know is that we can end youth homelessness, the youth homelessness crisis. We can make it rare, brief, non-recurring, to be more specific, in a pretty simple way by resourcing those young people and then asking them, how can we help you, versus waiting and expecting them to go through hoops and hurdles and lists and forms and documentations and to get along with many different kinds of people before they get any help. Instead, centering the help first and making the help unconditional and well-resourced. I'm really excited that we can end youth homelessness, and we can end it pretty simply by placing power and resources directly in the hands of young people.
And I love that. And I love that. And we're going to talk a little bit more about one of the things you're doing. And I think, a large percentage of youth experiencing homelessness have traveled through the child welfare system. They come out. And so there's a great deal of mistrust because, and again, no research to back me up or might not, but around, the people that were supposed to love you unconditionally to start with, in the sense if you're going through that system, they're not there. Everyone else has been, in your life for a short period of time. It's hard to build up relationships with everyone that was supposed to care about you, in a sense, has kind of let you down, or it's been short term. So a lot of mistrust, right, with the adults, and so we put them through their paces, and it's really unfair for young people. And I felt there was even saying that when you talk about resilience, my experience working with youth experiencing homelessness was there's still a great deal of hope. It was, hey man, this is my experience for now. This is not forever, right? So let's talk about one of the things you're doing that I think is super cool. We talk about this, and I think sometimes, with best intentions, we do some kind of half measures to help and wonder why it doesn't work, or we're reacting to homelessness after it's happened. But as things are starting, and we look now, hopefully, to focus on prevention, you're doing something really cool. You're working on a direct cash support project. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how that works?
Yeah, sure. So there's two. One, direct cash transfers as prevention, and the other one is direct cash transfers for a housing outcome for young people who are currently unstably housed. So the first one, direct cash transfers as prevention, takes a lot of the lessons learned from Washington in the U.S., Washington State, in Away Home Washington, which has been doing it for some time. And so if you train a wide number of individuals who encounter young people to be aware when a young person is about to experience unstable housing, and then identify housing options and things that can prevent them from experiencing homelessness in the first place, and giving them money for those things, and around $3,000 to $4,000 US on average, some less, some more, you can end and prevent them from experiencing homelessness in the first place. And then, there's motivational interviewing and training of allied adults to help as well. But the cash being really critical, and the there's no there with the cash. It is really given to the young person, and they're empowered to use the cash wisely for the things that they determine they need at that point in time to prevent them from being unstably housed, and those needs being centered around really flexible uses of money for their housing. And the second one is direct cash transfers for housing when the young person is unstably housed. So that looks very similar to rapid rehousing in the U.S., where a landlord gets 1 year to 2 years worth of rent, and a young person then helps to offset that rent with their own income, and there's a lease in their own name, and then there's optional services as well. So the permutation of that we center, while also supporting rapid rehousing, which is a great intervention, is to give the money to the young person instead of the landlord. It's like a very small shift in words, but really transformative in its power. Young people are experts in their own lives, and actually right now it would be hard to find any program in probably any city or any state where a young person can knock on the door of a service provider and say, hey, I need $30,000 over 2 years to be stably housed. There's no way young people can get money, right? You have to wait on a waiting list. You have to be on this building, on this block, in this city with this roommate. It's never empowering the young person as the expert in navigating their lives, which they are. I mean, you can never understand all the nuances of another person's needs, and then the arrogance of forcing them, right, to do certain things only, which we do by forcing them to stay in a shelter or to stay in a transitional living program or stay in one permanent supportive housing program versus giving them those funds and then asking them, what other services do you need after that? So anyway, it's the cost of shared housing for 24 months given directly to the young person. And then in both examples, at Point Source Youth, we're really centering having peer navigators, so having young people deliver services to other young people. So a lot of times the other answer in these programs is a young person needs other help, right, besides cash, which we agree with. And the answer to giving that young person other help is to hire a social worker or somebody with an advanced degree to then help them. We've seen that hiring a young person to help another young person with mentorship and management by somebody with an advanced degree is the better solution, and that young people helping other young people really make tremendous progress. They have flexible communications, and a young person can now have support from somebody that comes from their community and has their shared lived experience, which is huge. So that's direct cash transfers for prevention and for housing, and services with peer navigators, young people who are helping other young people.
Well, listen, and I'm sure what incredible programs are both of them. And I'm sure it didn't come about without people pushing back. And I got to say, well, I was in New York City. We were meeting with you and the team there, and someone on the team, our group, said, give a young person 3,000. Oh, they would never. And you said, you need to check your adultism, which I thought was great, because there's too many assumptions made, right? There's assumptions made about, oh, if you give someone, it not just youth, it's all people experiencing homelessness. If you give them money, they'll spend it on X, Y, or they'll do this, or or there's a lot of assumptions. And you're saying, listen, these are the experts. So let's talk about, number one, did you get some pushback? Number two, what are some of the results you're seeing in giving people or providing them with these cash transfers or these dollars for housing?
Yeah, so on the second question first, so New York City, in partnership with our research partners, we're seeing the first year's worth of data. It's the 2.5-year study, so it's really early. But in general, youth who are receiving cash are spending it on housing. They have positive housing outcomes. They're saving money, and they also have positive health trends also. So it's going as we expected it to. Also, it's a 2-year cash transfer, right? So we're not expecting, after three months, everyone's problems are solved. I mean, young people experiencing homelessness, are battling against tremendous societal issues of unaffordable housing, of discrimination based on income, based on race, based on gender and sexual orientation. So it's going well. That's what the data is indicating in its early days. And I would say on the pushback side, I would answer the question differently by asking a different question, which is, what is the current homeless system spending money on, and is that working? Because that's what we're really going to show, is that the current system is expensive and doesn't work, and doesn't have long-term housing outcomes, especially non-permanent housing solutions, right? Things that are impermanent, like shelters, like transitional living programs, which don't have permanent housing outcomes afterward. I mean, there's an important ecosystem, but it's not like we have the current gold standard, which is working amazingly well, and people leave those programs stably housed with amazing jobs. The current system is expensive, and oftentimes young people are not leaving in the exits to permanent housing that we want. So we know that what we're spending money on now is not working so well. So for example, a shelter costs $40,000 a year. And what if you gave that money to a young person? So that's more of the question that we want to focus on, is giving the money to the young person is more efficient. Depending on the type of person asking these questions, that appeals to many different kinds of politically minded individuals, right? Spending state resources well by empowering the population that you want to help and giving them services after that. And we really want to make sure that the money is used for what young people want, which is housing and access to healthcare and good paying jobs and education, and not giving the money to the young person and giving it to an institution, by definition, doesn't empower them in the same way. So I think it's a great opportunity to reframe the solution. And then we can have other things like it could be cheaper, it could be more efficient, it can scale, it doesn't require a NIMBYism, not in my backyard mentality. And it really enables the flexibility and creativity and awesomeness of young people to use those funds in creative and outstanding ways that we would have never expected them to use them. So that's the part I'm really excited about, is all of the positivity that comes from empowering youth.
Well, it's a choice of where you live, like everyone else, saves money, saves lives, changes lives, empowers young people. I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer. I think sometimes it's about giving up that control and fear of, and I think the early data is showing young people are seeing great success with this. So we give them the power to create their own future and wrap those resources around them, good things happen. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, the other analogy I like to say is, if somebody's thirsty and in the desert, you have to study whether or not you give them water.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, it's true. Now, I've read already there's other states wanting to do this, right? There's other people coming on board to do this. Have you seen growth?
Yeah, so we're doing direct cash transfers for housing outcomes. That's around $30,000, the cost of shared housing for 2 years in New York City, soon to be San Francisco, and the state of Oregon, and a little bit of a different timeline in Vermont as well. And then for direct cash transfers for prevention, we just launched an RFP and are about to this week select the communities that are going to work on that. But that's going to be 2 partners in New York City, 3 other partners, and 2 partners in the Bay Area. So that's 7 plus 5, 11. So there's about 11 different communities all doing direct cash transfers in either prevention or for a housing outcome today.
Incredible work. So, Larry, I'll tell you, we tried to do this. So, Blue Door, a partnership with the Canadian Observatory on Homelessness and Away Home Canada, we actually tried to launch this where I'm from, just north of Toronto, and with a small. But we had and we're still pushing for it. We had a tough time finding a funder to come on board and it was around the cash piece. People have said, "We'll fund your staffing, we'll fund the research." The cash piece was tougher. Can you talk a little bit about the funding model, how you went about securing those funds?
Yes, in each community of those 11, there's different funders. So philanthropy is a key funder. So we have Trinity Wall Street in New York City, the New York City Fund for Youth and Family Homelessness, Google.org in the Bay Area, tipping point in the Bay Area, as well as the city of San Francisco. We're partnering on working with LASA, the LA Homeless Service Authority, as well. New York City also funded the cash transfers itself. The cash is needed. The funding is needed for the cash. The pushback needs to be addressed with continued confidence and clarity. And I think the thing I like to say over and over again is what you're spending money on right now, we know doesn't have the outcomes that we want. And young people are experts in their own lives. And there's much data showing that cash transfers and direct cash are the most globally studied and effective anti-poverty tool. Everywhere outside of this conversation, if somebody says we want to address poverty, nobody says buy all these things, give it to leaders, and have those leaders redistribute those things on like buses and in buildings to folks who need income. Everyone has realized globally that the most efficient and direct and helpful way of addressing poverty is through giving people money for what they need. Just today on TikTok, I saw Oprah and The Rock raising money for the Hawaii wildfires by giving directly young families and others impacted by the wildfires money for their needs. No one would question that, right? If somebody is impacted by a crisis, wouldn't you want to give directly that family money for everything they need to rebuild their lives? Why would you buy like a bus and fill it with things and drive it to Hawaii, even though that's impossible with the ocean, and then give it to somebody knowing that you bought them the wrong thing, right? They didn't need a t-shirt, they needed something else. So it's strange in that it's kind of the most logical, the most studied, the most evaluated, the most direct, the most affirming, the most equity driven, the most trans-centric, LGBTQ-centric, anti-racist intervention we could come up with is resourcing well the population that we want to help, and then asking them what services do they need thereafter. And if you have that kind of courage of communication, it then forces some uncomfortable conversations. Like the specific quote, Michael, was somebody said, "My daughter would not spend that money well." And that's something we hear a lot. And that's when I said, check your adultism and your myopic view, because not everyone in the world is your daughter. And poor people are really good at managing money, and Black queer youth are amazing humans. And, they're not you.
Yeah, I love that. You're right. And I agree. Ask people, who are the best people at budgeting? It's people that have had to budget their entire lives, right? And every dollar counts. This is so cool. Larry, if people want to find out more about the amazing work that Point Source Youth is doing, if they want to learn more, if they want to maybe scale it, say, to Canada or other parts of the world, where can they check out the work you're doing?
Yeah, so if you go to pointsourceyouth.org, it's a great website. Under the intervention section, we have their 2 direct cash transfer projects, and they include budgets and RFPs, so you can learn how those projects are scaling. And then on that website, we also put all of our conference videos. We have 3 conferences a year, and those include the results and experiences of youth going through the interventions, and those get updated on a regular basis. And yeah, we definitely want to partner. We want to grow, and we want to work in partnership to end youth homelessness by placing power and resources directly in the hands of youth.
I love it. I'm so grateful to you and the team for all you do. You do give us hope in the fact that we can do this, and it's because of programs that you're pushing forward, that you're leading. It's amazing work. Thank you so much for all you do, and thanks for joining us today on The Way Home.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Michael.
All right, Larry, keep up the great work. We'll see you next time on The Way Home.
Bye now.